Welcome on in to Nashville's Morning News, along with Johnny B., Ken Weaver as well, Dan Mandis, and it's our morningly update. Is that a thing, morningly? Our daily update with Patrick Leahy from the Tennessee Star. I love this because the headline really speaks for itself. University of Tennessee quietly renaming its Division of Diversity and Engagement to dodge state law. Now, not real surprising because we know that their diversity, and this is going on across the country, these divisions of diversity and engagement, I mean, it's all just a bunch of progressive nonsense.
Exactly. It's our top story right now at the Tennessee Star, Dan. And what's interesting about this is they are creatively attempting to dodge the state law. There was a state law passed, signed into law by the governor last year, prohibiting universities from mandating training related to divisive concepts. Well, arguably, if you're talking about diversity and engagement and you're promoting one group over the other to be diverse, that is, by definition, divisive. So the geniuses at the University of Tennessee think the way to change that, way to dodge the state law, is to change the name of that department from the Division of Diversity and Engagement to the Division of Access and Engagement. They think they're being very clever.
Access? Is that that's right up there with equity, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the Guy Harrison, he's the newly appointed director of diversity, equity, DEI, right? Mm-hmm. That guy?
Inclusion,
Yeah, and inclusion, thank you. For the School of Journalism and Media said, quote, this move to change the name, quote, it's an effort to detract attention from state politicians who have begun to take issue with discussions of diversity in recent years. Now, state politicians who take issue, that's actually a law.
That's not an issue. That's a law.
Yeah.
Actually a law.
So in other words, this guy, Guy Harrison, who's a director of DEI at UT, thinks that he's the law. And the Tennessee General Assembly is just, something to be dismissed.
Well, then he's the newly appointed director of DEI for the School of Journalism and Media. So this is how we're training young journalists, apparently.
Dan, we've had journalists apply to work at the Tennessee Star. And we have the one exception where the young man who just resigned at MTSU is going to be with us here, I think, later this week to talk about that. But for the most part, the journalism departments in colleges are basically departments of, propaganda.
Yeah.
Right now. Yep. Far left propaganda.
Mm-hmm. I love his quote. I'm reading his quote. He says, and it's a longer quote, but I'm going to read it because the punchline is great. He says, we are in a very ultra-conservative state, thank God, and there are political actors who would completely do away with DEI, whether it's the title or the work we do, Harrison says, according to the outlet. And this kind of protects us from them a little bit. But I wish it wasn't necessary. We shouldn't need to whitewash the word diversity out of things just not to alarm certain people. Well, the problem is they've hijacked the word diversity.
This guy lacks self-awareness, wouldn't you say? Because here he is. He's, some educrat.
Educrat. I like that.
You like that? He's some educrat who's probably gone to, has a PhD in nothingness, right? But what he's saying is we don't need to obey state law.
Well, isn't that the progressive way?
I think it is.
I mean, whether it's, stealing, stuff out of a Home Depot or, beating up cops or not obeying state law when it comes to DEI in colleges.
Well,
the laws don't apply to the people on the left, apparently.
Well, as it turns out, we've talked to several members of the Tennessee General Assembly who have a very different view about this.
I bet they do.
And I think there's going to be a comeuppance, shall we say, for the members of the DEI, Diversity and Engagement Program at the University of Tennessee, who think they're getting away with being a little bit too clever.
Well, the funny thing, he's admitting it in the article.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're trying to pull a fast one, don't admit that you're trying to pull a fast one and draw attention to it.
I think he thinks his audience is the left-wing progressive students there.
Yes.
Right, because that was reported in the University of Tennessee Beacon, Daily Beacon, which is the student newspaper.
Yeah.
I don't think that the Tennessee Star will be hiring too many kids who report for the Daily Beacon.
See, isn't that the problem, though?
Yeah.
I mean, because when I've reported these stories to death now at this point, but you have these college graduates that are coming out, and there are people who are actually CEOs who will say, "Do not hire from these Ivy League schools because of what they represent."
I will say this, that we have, because we hire young journalists all the time, and there are a number that apply that have been, shall we say, infected with left-wing dogma, and you just can't, you can't get it out.
Right.
But there are the occasional few, and we've hired them, and they're great. But, it's very difficult for a young person today in college to be a traditional American. Very, very difficult.
It's very difficult. I've got to ask this. I saw this. Would-be copycat transgender killer has been charged in Nashville, Illinois.
Yeah,
this guy is horrific.
His name is Jason Lee Willis.
Yep.
Jason Lee Willie. And he was born a male. He's in his 40s.
Yeah.
He's a transgender. He self-identifies as a transgender woman. He was arrested on November 7th in Illinois on 14 felony counts of interstate communication violations for basically threatening to kill young children.
Yeah. I'm gonna read a couple of these quotes. This is from the Tennessee Star. He says this was a video call on an online platform saying, quote, "A person in Tennessee walked into one of your schools and shot up a bunch of your Christian daughters. That's not the last of them if you don't shut your blanking mouth." He has a problem with people who have a problem with the likes of him.
So here's the thing about this, Dan. The Metro Nashville Police Department, the FBI, the various groups that are associated with Covenant School that are in litigation have all argued that they cannot release the Covenant Killer Manifesto because there might be a copycat. Well, guess what?
Yep.
Hello. There's already copycats.
He also said there's a lot of transgenders out here that are tired of being picked on, and we're going to go into the schools and we're going to kill your blanking kids out here, and that's the end of it. He says we are at war. He also allegedly said online. So, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that is, number one, terrifying, and number two, you think he's going to spend any time in jail, really?
Yes, I think he will.
Okay. Like good time?
I don't know.
As in throw his ass
it's a federal,
in jail.
It's a federal charge, so
Yeah.
we'll see. But here's the thing about this. I think what we're witnessing right now is a huge increase in mental illness that translates into the phenomenon, if you will, of transgenderism. That's actually, it's a sign of mental illness. And it's very difficult to deal with mental illness in the normal traditional ways.
Well, and then you look at what he does, and you'll have people that will actually excuse his behavior, excuse the behavior of literally threatening school kids. And this is what's happening, obviously, online, and we'll see what happens with him. Memphis is in the news, and, one of the things that I've noticed, I've been here for so long. I don't know if I've ever seen a positive story coming out of Memphis. Is that there? I'm sure there have been. There's like the Ford plant, if I remember right, the big.
Well, I'll tell you, there's an ongoing positive story in Memphis.
Tell me, please.
St. Jude's.
Okay.
That is a fantastic facility, and it does great things.
Yep.
It is a small island, however, in a sea of crime.
Well, you and I spoke about the other day where you have. Now the governor is sending 40 state troopers out there to Memphis, and I said you're going to need more. Shelby County Sheriff to increase presence in shopping areas until Christmas amid Memphis crime surge. The cops are in such a unfortunate position because you got all these all these young, either teenagers, young adults, whatever it is that you want to call them. And they just show up, and we're seeing this at the new outlet mall in, is it?
Tangiers?
Yeah. And so we're seeing the same thing there. where everybody gets together on social media or whatever, group text or whatever it is, and they say, this is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. And you got like 20 of them, 20, 25 of them, and they just go in and steal crap and they leave because they know that nothing's going to happen to them.
The problem is weak police forces, a weak police force combined with a crime-friendly district attorney. That's the formula they have in Memphis. Yep. And soft on crime, District Attorney Funk here in Nashville.
Mm-hmm. So what do you do if you're in Memphis? I mean, there's stories all over the place. There was one earlier in New York where you have business owners saying, we're just going to shut down. I mean, it's almost a story that we see all too often now where it's just another day in America.
Well, in certain parts of America.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for instance, New York City, right? You've seen the story in the New York Post. Police officers are leaving New York City in droves.
Yeah.
Memphis has the same problem. Their population over the past decade has increased by about 3 or 4%, but their police force has declined by about 10 or 15%. Because, if you think about it, that is a very difficult job, being a police officer in New York City or Memphis or here in Nashville. I think it's not as bad in Nashville, but it's starting to look a lot more like Memphis than it is, a bucolic wonderland.
What do you think is the answer? I mean, I know what the answer is. The answer is more parental involvement at an early age. People are often critical of, we're not investing in the schools and, all of these other things. But the reality is that parental involvement and specifically fatherly involvement is the number one way to fix this problem. And nobody really seems to want to address that. There's one guy, a lawmaker, state lawmaker, I forget his name, out of Memphis. I played audio from him. Great audio. And he called out, the fatherless households and the wussified parents who simply refuse to hold their kids accountable.
I think if you look at, there's so many difficulties with this, right? Increased crime, a lack of discipline among children, the rise of social media, groupthink, all of these things, and then soft on crime prosecutors, and then a legal system that doesn't really punish bad guys, right?
Is the only, and I'll let you finish, but is the only answer to these questions build more prisons?
No, I don't think so. I think that the answer is actually to control your local community. So in other words, here in Metro Nashville area, make your county strong. Have your county district attorney enforce the law. Support your local police. Support your local churches, for instance. It's a long-term cultural problem. It took us a long time to get here.
Yep.
It's going to take a long time to get out of that. But I do think the answer would be to focus sort of one metro area, one county, one city at a time, and exercise your own leadership within your community.
All right, last one real quick, and I say this for last because it's somewhat of a boring topic, but talk about Governor Lee. He wants school vouchers within the next couple of years. Every student, K through 12, will be able to go to a private school. I've got a lot of questions, including one, which is, of course, that these vouchers, I think $7,000.
I saw one report that an education savings account in Memphis is $8,200 this year.
Okay, but that's not going to pay the entire tuition for a private school. So
depends on the private school, but
obviously depends on the private school. But
I will say this: we don't know the details, the full details. There have been a lot of leaks out there.
Yep.
But I think the general theme is, I think the governor is going to make a proposal tomorrow afternoon to increase the number of counties where your kids can have education savings accounts from 3, which is now Nashville, Davidson County, Shelby County, and Hamilton County. I guess about 2,500 kids involved in it right now, to all 95 counties in the state. And so the details of who will be eligible, how long it will be universal access, we'll find that out tomorrow.
I'm hearing, I don't know if you and I talk to the same people. I'm hearing that there's some folks within the Republican Party that is saying this is DOA. I don't know.
I don't think it's DOA, but I think the problem...
Got some challenges.
The big challenge is with the rural state house members, for the most part. I think it's going to pass the state Senate, but there are 99 members of the state house, and many rural Republican legislators are in districts where the largest employer is a public school.
Yeah.
And so there's political pressure there. And so I think what you're going to see is, I think it'll pass the state Senate. I think it is going to be problematic in the state House. I think it'll depend on the details that we hear tomorrow from Governor Lee.
Which we don't have all the details. We'll have them, though, and probably talk about them on Wednesday.
I think we will.
Find out on Tuesday.
As a general matter of policy, I support school choice.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Me too.